Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a good day. So today I wanted to talk about the Steam Deck a little bit more. You might have seen it, you might not have, but I recently did a video on my first impressions of the Steam Deck. That video has actually been the best video on my channel, ever. So really, if you watched that one, thank you so much for that. I can't believe just quite how many views it got compared to my other videos. So, thank you again. I'm really happy about that. And it's been really great to welcome lots of new people to the channel. So if you're new from that video, then welcome, and I hope you'll stick around. As we're getting closer to Christmas now, I thought it might be a good idea to do sort of a buying guide for the Steam Deck, centered around it. So I'm going to talk about some things you can pick up if you have a loved one who has a Steam Deck and they're really excited for it and you're not quite sure what to get for them for Christmas and you're looking for some inspiration. So the first one that I'll talk about today is possibly an obvious one, but it's the Steam Deck Dock. Steam Deck Dock. Ooh. If you're not really up to date with what the Steam Deck is and you just have a loved one who's really into the Steam Deck, as well as being a handheld, the Steam Deck can actually plug into a dock and then plug into a TV or an external monitor, and so that way you can play it on a much bigger screen. It doesn't have to stay handheld. Unlike the Nintendo Switch though, the Steam Deck doesn't actually come with a dock, included in the original purchase. You have to buy one separately. And so if they've not got one yet, then this could be the perfect sort of companion gift to go with the Steam Deck for Christmas. Now, considering the Steam Deck is an actual PC, that means there are quite a few Steam Deck docks that you can choose from. Valve do make an official one, and honestly, this is probably the one that I would say is the safest one to get. It's been specifically made by Valve with the Steam Deck in mind. It's gonna come with a warranty, it's gonna come with Valve's customer service, which I think is really good. But it does come at sort of a premium. It's more expensive than the other ones. If you're looking for something that doesn't quite cost as much, there are other ones. You can get these on places like Amazon. There's one by JSAUX and also one by iVoler, and those are the two that everybody talks about. It's hard for me to say that I 100% recommend these because I don't actually have them, but those two brands are the ones that come up again and again when you do searches for third-party docks, and people seem to be generally having a good time with them. The only downside to buying a dock is you might have to share your TV over the Christmas period, so maybe you should keep that in mind. If you don't want to share the TV, maybe a dock's not the right gift to get. Moving on then to the second thing, and this is an SD card to expand the storage of a Steam Deck. So depending on which Steam Deck model you have, you've either got 64GB, 256 or 512GB of internal storage. Not to say that you can't get by with these, but especially for the 64GB model, if you're downloading big games, then you're going to run out of space very quickly, and in fact some games are even too big to fit on just a 64GB model. And so this can mean that an SD card is a really good way to expand the storage. There is a bit of a debate as to whether an SD card will be slower than the internal storage, but on the whole it seems to be that it's not too much of a difference. You don't really notice it. You can still play just as well as you could before. And so if you know somebody who just got one of the smaller models, or even does have a 512 model, and they've just run out, they download too many games, they run out of storage either way, then you can get an SD card. I've actually just bought one myself in the Amazon Black Friday sale. So I've bought the Samsung Evo Select 512GB SD card. I picked that up for about half price on Black Friday, and I'm looking forward to popping that into my Steam Deck and expanding the storage. Now, one of the biggest benefits I personally think with the Steam Deck and it being handheld is the fact that you can play your PC games but still hang out in the same room as your family and friends, and you don't have to lock yourself away in the room where your PC is. At least that's the case for me. The slight downside of that though is that if you want to play your games sound out loud, then you might be winding up your family a fair bit. They just hear random game sounds coming from the other sofa where you're sat, and nobody wants to hear game sounds for something that they're not playing or they can't even see themselves. So the obvious solution for this is a pair of headphones, and so this is my next recommendation for a gift for somebody with a Steam Deck if they don't already have some nice headphones. Now for me, I actually like using wireless earbuds with my Steam Deck, and that's because I can just pop one in my ear and then I still have one ear free to chat to people, to stay sociable. And not just be, zoned in on my game and ignoring everything that's going on. So for that reason, I just use one earbud, and because I have an iPhone, I use AirPods. But there's a whole different range of other, headphones that you can get. There's wired ones, wireless ones, there's big over-the-top headsets, there's little earbuds. It kind of really just depends on the person, what they might prefer. Like I said, I like to use AirPods. The Bluetooth can connect up to the Steam Deck really easily. That took me no time at all to set up, and they sound perfect. But I just generally think that, you know, having some headphones, having a way to listen to your games as well without annoying the people around you is a really good way to play. Controllers then. So you might not know it, but the Steam Deck can work with external controllers. They connect via Bluetooth, the same as headphones, and you know, this means not only can you play with like the Steam Deck sat on a table while you use a controller, but it's also really good for the dock that I mentioned before. If you get a dock and you put it on the TV and you're sat on the sofa, then you use a Bluetooth controller, and that way it almost turns into like a living room console. And kind of like the headphones, you know, there's loads of different controllers that will work with the Steam Deck. I like the official Xbox One controller. That's what I've been using. I have a few of those from before, from when I used an Xbox One. And so I just sort of grabbed one and connected it to the Steam Deck, and it worked perfectly. It worked first time, didn't take very long to set up at all. Just paired the Bluetooth and away I went. So those are good ones. PS5 controllers also work, but if you don't want to spend as much on an official controller, then there's loads of third-party controllers you can get. 8BitDo, they've just put a patch out on the Steam Deck, so supposedly the 8BitDo ones work, and they're kind of generally regarded as a really good third-party maker of controllers. But typically anything you can find on Amazon that is a Bluetooth controller should work. It should work, but it'd be worth checking reviews for those. Yeah, my personal recommendation is an Xbox controller, just because I like the way that they feel in the hands. They're a good shape. Okay, so the last sort of section I'm going to do now is not based on physical accessories, but it's based on games that you could buy a loved one for their Steam Deck for Christmas. And buying a PC game as a gift is not quite as simple as buying a console game as a gift. You can't just walk into a shop anymore and, you know, pick up a game case and buy it and then, you know, wrap it up and hand it over. It doesn't quite work like that, unfortunately. So there's a couple of ways you would have to go about buying a game if you do want to buy a game for a loved one for Christmas on PC on Steam Deck. So really I would recommend buying games on Steam. There are lots of CD key websites and things like that, but I've never used one. I've always been a bit worried about that. You know, not only will the keys work, but sort of also where are the keys coming from? There's lots of shady websites out there. I'm sure there are genuine ones too, but I personally just stick to Steam because I know that it's genuine. So that's what I would recommend to everybody as well. And so if you are going to buy a game on Steam to gift to somebody, there's two ways to do it really. First way is if you have an account yourself, or if maybe you're buying it for like a child and you know their sibling has a Steam account, you can borrow theirs and you can pay for it on that account and gift it to the person you want to give it to. So that way it's already paid for, it just pops up, they get a message, they say, you know, such and such has shared a game with you, and then they can just click accept and download it and away they go. If you don't have a Steam account already and you want to set one up, it's free to set one up. You just go to the Steam website. It doesn't cost you anything to set one up. You just pay for the game that you want to do. You would just need to know what your loved one's username is, log in and add them as a friend. If you don't want to go through that process, then the other way, of course, is buying a Steam gift card. And this is, you know, it's exactly like an Amazon gift card or, you know, one for a retail shop. You just buy a gift card. It can either be physical or digital. You know, you get a code and then they just pop it into their Steam account and they get the credit, you know, 10, 20, 30 pounds, something like that, however much you want to give. And then they can use that to put towards whatever game they choose. And, you know, you could always give them a gift card of £20 and say, you know, oh, I'm going to buy you this game, you know, here, this is what this is for. Just because, you know, as I say, it is a little bit more complicated buying a PC game for somebody than it is a console game. But what games would I recommend? Well, I've got a small handful here. This is by no means an exhaustive list. There are so many PC games that are, you know, wonderful to play, really, really good. There are hundreds and hundreds of videos on the internet talking about what are good PC games. I could never make enough videos to go through them all, but I've picked out a few that I think are a good range of different genres, suitable for different age brackets. So here we go. First one is Vampire Survivors, and oh man, let me tell you, I did not expect this game to be at the top of this list for, you know, giftable games on the Steam Deck. My Steam Deck has been away recently being repaired, and while it was away, the Steam Autumn Sale was on. And so I picked up a few games, you know, I picked up Persona 5, I picked up Disco Elysium, and I picked up Vampire Survivors. And really, I only picked up Vampire Survivors because it was pretty cheap. It was only a few pound in the sale. And I've just seen so many people talk about how, you know, how unexpectedly fun it was. And I kind of thought, okay, well, you know, everybody on the internet overhypes things. It probably won't be quite as good as they say, but it's not very expensive. You know, I'll give it a go. And so I got my Steam Deck back and I started installing the games, and I just installed Vampire Survivors first because it's a very small game and I thought I could play it while I install all the other games that I wanted to play. And let me tell you, I've played Vampire Survivors way more than I expected to. It's a very old school game. It's a very small game. The idea is very simple as well. The idea of it is it's kind of like a roguelike. You pick a character and you just walk around a map and undead creatures sort of like come at you, and you just see how long you can survive for. You level as you kill things. You can get experience points, and those will let you level up, and as you level up you get different unlock, and so you grow more powerful and you just survive as long as possible. And then in between rounds you've earned money and you can put those towards you know, permanent progression. So as I say, it's really simple. You don't even actually attack. All you do to control it is you move the joystick, you walk around, and the weapons that you have actually go off automatically. So it really is simple, but it's really quite addictive. I think there's a couple of reasons for this. The music is to my taste. I really enjoy the music. It's sort of got that upbeat, bouncy feeling. I could listen to it for a long time, which I think helps. And the second reason I think is that the feeling of progression is really good. So you start off quite weak, you only last a few minutes, and then as you sort of unlock more things, you know, you complete achievements, and that gives you more unlocks that you can find during a new run. And as you do that, you sort of start to see your progression and how you get more powerful, and it's noticeable in each run. When you first play, towards the start of the game, there's like swarms of bats that sort of like come across the screen, and they come at you quite quickly. And you know, when you first start out, that's a bit of a whoa moment. You're like, oh my god, how am I going to survive this? I have to run really quickly. But then, you know, later on, after you've played, you know, you've got a few runs under your belt, you've started to get some unlocks, you know, you start to look at those bats differently, you know, especially if you get the garlic. And you know, that's sort of like an AoE around you, and then you look at those bats that are quite weak and you think, actually, I'm not afraid of you anymore. You're just experience points to me. And you know, that kind of progression, I love that. That's really fun. And so that's why I would recommend Vampire Survivors. But I am still struggling at about 11 minutes. There's this big swarm of skeletons, and I've only got past those once. I'm still struggling with that. So any tips for Vampire Survivors, I would love if anybody is watching who's played it. But I would really recommend it. It's cheap, it's fun, and it's honestly a really well put together little game. And I think that, you know, maybe somebody who's a little bit older, who kind of has an appreciation for older style of games, will really get into it. Okay, moving on now. So we're going to talk about Mass Effect next. I did talk about Mass Effect in my first impressions, and I still think it's a really good game to gift to somebody. The Legendary Edition, the remake, it contains all 3 Mass Effect games in one. So, you know, whoever you're gifting this to will have a huge insane number of hours, hundreds of hours worth of content. Mass Effect is a really beloved game. You know, it's sort of like a massive sci-fi RPG, loads of characters, loads of worlds, there's different classes, things like that. The decisions that you have to make are really important as well. So, you know, if they play the whole way through and they finish the game, then, you know, there's replayability there as well, because you can go back and make different decisions and see how those would outcome things. And, you know, honestly, just the experience of having this in your hand is amazing. So, you know, I'd recommend that to anybody who's into sci-fi, RPGs, or, you know, sort of like over-the-shoulder third-person shooter combat. There was a bit of a problem for a while with the EA launcher, but after I got my Steam Deck back, I tried it again, and it seems to be fine now. It works every time for me, so, you know, I'm quite happy to again recommend that game. I think it's going to work fine. Okay, I'm going to cheat a little bit now, and I'm going to include 2 games in one, and this is Portal and Portal 2. Portal and Portal 2 are probably some of the most beloved ever puzzle games on the PC. They are really highly recommended. They are, you know, incredible, very clever, very funny. They're not super violent, so they're fine for, you know, a younger audience, although they can maybe get a bit complicated. And Portal 2 is multiplayer actually. You can play 2-player co-op, so you can always buy this for somebody with the intent to play it with them. But generally it's a really good, really rewarding game. And it often goes on sale for pretty cheap now because it's been around for a long time. And it's made by Valve, the same people that made the Steam Deck themselves. It seems to work really well on there. Elden Ring next, and honestly I can't believe Elden Ring runs on a handheld. Sure, it's not perfect, you're not going to get highest setting 60 FPS, you know, all the way through the game. You're definitely not going to get that, but if you can make some compromises, cut back on, you know, the settings, if you don't need it high, if you don't need to run 60 FPS, then you can get a decent, you know, you can run Elden Ring in a decent way that's perfectly playable. You know, it's the new big game this year, the big open world RPG, the one that everybody's talking about. It's reviewed incredibly. Honestly, a lot of people will probably already have this one. And I wouldn't say it's for, you know, too young an audience because, you know, it's violent, it's complicated, there's a lot of mechanics that don't really explain themselves very well. You sort of have to learn as you go. But honestly, Elden Ring is so good. I have to recommend it to anybody who's into games who hasn't tried it yet. God of War is another really good one that I would recommend. I absolutely love the God of War series. It is an action game, but the focus really is on the story, and the story is incredible. It's this amazing father-son bonding story. They go through trials. They start off, you know, they're not so in sync, and the more you play, the more they come together, and it really is incredible. And it's on PC now. You know, it's PS4 exclusive originally, but it's been ported across to PC. The port was done well. Plenty of people now have been playing it on the Steam Deck. And once again, like Elden Ring, you're not going to run it on high settings at 60 frames per second all the time, but you are going to be able to get a good way to play it and get to play God of War handheld. A couple of years ago, who would have thought we'd be saying that? But you can play something like God of War handheld. Another one that I would recommend. One for JRPG fans now, and that's Persona 5 Royal. I've just bought this and I can say firsthand that I really like Persona 5 Royal, and it runs really, really well. You know, the style of the game, the hand-drawn aesthetics, you know, it really lends itself to something that doesn't have quite as much power, like the Steam Deck. You know, it runs really nicely. Some people seem to have difficulty with the text, you know, reading the text. They say it's a bit small, but I don't really find that. I think it works fine. This, again, like Mass Effect, this is one where there's hundreds of hours here. The story alone can take you in the region of 100 hours if you do, you know, as much content as possible. You're not rushing through it. This is sort of like it's a turn-based RPG combined with sort of like a social management sim where you spend your time deciding what you want to do, who you want to hang out with in your friends, if there's any sort of skills you want to focus on, and then it advances the calendar. There's usually a deadline when you have to defeat a certain bad guy by, otherwise, you know, something bad will happen and the game kind of gives you a game over. Another really good one though, it's really fun and, you know, really recommended by so many people. It got rave reviews. And I think this would be a good one for anyone who's into JRPGs if they don't already have it. And finally, we're going to talk about Skyrim. Now, Skyrim has been done to death. I do believe that it's been done to death. There's so many editions. It's just everywhere, Skyrim. There's far too many versions of the game. But depending on who you're gifting, if they've not played Skyrim before, which could be kind of rare, but at the same time, you know, there are more younger audiences getting involved with PC gaming now. Skyrim is sort of the RPG of the last decade. It's the one that everybody talks about, everybody's into. It's not too adult, you know, it is a bit violent, but it's not super gory. You know, there's not that many adult themes really. So it's kind of a good all-round gift to give to anybody, I think. You can play however you want. You can wander the world. You can do different types of combat. You can get into different types of crafting. Or you can collect books if you want. You can do your own house management system. I genuinely do think that Skyrim is for everyone really, and so that's why it's the last game on this list that I would recommend. So there we go. That's sort of my gift guide for the Steam Deck. You know, if you have a loved one who has a Steam Deck, you want to get them something, I really hope this has helped you. You know, please let me know down in the comments if it's been helpful. And also, if you're in the comments and you think of some other things that other people might want to buy as a gift for somebody else, then, you know, pop them down there. Maybe we can put together an even bigger list of Steam Deck gift options. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.